When I was growing up, I was a massive fan of Star Wars. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm some super nerd for it, but I always thought the idea of the Force and the idea that it's all around you just like the air is, like air itself is, I thought it was such a cool concept. And it wasn't necessarily a realistic concept, but it was a concept where you bring a powerful, like kind of ability or kind of a powerful literal force, and you bring it into a kind of real life scenario, you could say. I'm not saying, like I said, that it's a perfectly and utterly solid, foolproof superpower, but still, the Force is an interesting concept that I've loved for a very, very long time. So why not give our one and only Tanjiro the Force? Now, with that said, there's a couple things that need to actually occur for Tanjiro to get the Force. Yes, Demon Slayer has its kind of own power system in a way. It has some interesting power systems, actually, with concentration breathing and also some abilities that are very, very, very unrealistic. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying that is a real thing, that it's unrealistic for certain people to have certain abilities and for certain things to happen by you just breathing properly. I know some of you will argue like, oh, but it is true. Your performance is better if you breathe a certain way or breathe a certain amount of times per minute or whatever, which is true. I mean, we have elite athletes that have shown this in real life, but that's not necessarily true when we're talking about the things Demon Slayers can do. So let's talk about the reality of Tanjiro having the Force. For starters, it would most likely have to derive from someone that Tanjiro knows. In my opinion, probably best person is his dad. At the end of the day, his dad did kill a crazy large bear in basically not even his heyday when he was sick and Tanjiro was just a young child. I mean, we're talking about a guy that straight up killed a terrifying bear that was killing people person after person, and he's able to do it with relative ease. And Tanjiro even confirms this, saying that his father does some impressive feats. So in my opinion, you could have it so Tanjiro's father actually kills this bear, but instead of kind of explaining to Tanjiro in a regard of it being, well, what we eventually know as concentration breathing, or just, Tanjiro's father being of that type of kind of breed, we actually learn that it's even more than just that. Yes, it's concentration breathing, and Tanjiro's father has some connection to quote-unquote demon slayers, just in terms of, well, sun breathing. We've seen it with the dance and so on and so forth, but it's actually more than that now. His ability to defeat the bear is actually because of something that is very unknown to practically everyone. And the last person to actually utilize it was the one and only Yoriichi. Yes, Tanjiro won't know who Yoriichi is, and his father wouldn't really know anything about him either, but that's who it is. But that's just not something they exactly know at the moment. Yoriichi was the last person to utilize the Force against the demons, and this would strike fear into Muzan even further. Fear that somehow a demon slayer would come about learning of some sort of power in which Tanjiro would be that demon slayer, at least unfortunately for Muzan. Now, with that said, Tanjiro would learn from his father what the Force is, but he wouldn't have time to actually get any training. Now, you might think, oh, this is horrible, that's not good at all. But we know that once someone that utilizes the Force to his utmost ability, and in my opinion, Tanjiro's father would be that type of person, especially with the feats he's shown he can do, being on death's door and actually still dancing in the middle of the snow. Well, he actually more or less is able to utilize the Force to a large degree, and on his deathbed, he would actually, well, become one with the Force. And after becoming one with the Force, he truly would be the guide for Tanjiro. Tanjiro would head to a spot that his father told him to meet him at one day, or in a way meet him later in the future, and Tanjiro would arrive. But this spot is different. a lot different than what Tanjiro really knows and actually has heard of in the location that he currently lives in. But he spends a lot of his time actually here. Yes, he does help his family quite a bit, but he does that kind of here and there, and doesn't help out nowhere near as much, in my opinion, as he normally does. Now, this doesn't mean that his family suffers in any way. Tanjiro does a lot, and I'm sure he could get his side of the work done relatively easily, but he probably just wouldn't do the extra things Tanjiro and the person he is normally would do, because he would be actually meeting with his father. Yeah, a spirit version of his father, or at least a force version of his father that is within the force, a vestige that is able to speak with him and teach him the way of the force. Now, this is no easy feat at all, but Tanjiro's father in this regard would know actually a lot more about the demons than he ever let on when he was alive, and teaching Tanjiro the force like this is a lot easier. Now, it is a lot easier just because Tanjiro's father is only worried about teaching Tanjiro, literally nothing else. Not worried about a single thing other than actually worrying about Tanjiro. No dancing, no rituals, no helping the family, no getting food, no saving people from bears. It is only this. Now, I won't say Tanjiro becomes some crazy Jedi. That's just the farthest from the truth. At the end of the day, there is no lightsabers. Those were lost to time a very long time ago. That's why they utilize swords. But with Tanjiro utilizing the Force and learning of it slowly but surely throughout this time, it will be a massive benefit to his ability to fight and many other things. There are tons of force abilities that are not necessarily easy, but are on the easier side of learning, and I'm not saying Tanjiro will be perfect at any of them, but it will benefit him drastically. We're talking about as much as manipulating kind of movement of a demon, holding them still, or even more drastic things like being able to heal himself with a force heal. Now, this you might think, that's a little overboard, don't you think? Well, actually, demon slayers are able to utilize breathing to heal a lot better. So who's to say Tanjiro wouldn't actually be able to do this as a, utilizer of the force, or a quote-unquote Jedi, or a Jedi in the making, you can call it. Now, with that said, once he's able to actually get training from the one and only Urokodaki, after, unfortunately, Nezuko is turned and his family is dead, now this would be the perfect time for him to learn even more than he ever knew in the first place. Being able to utilize concentration breathing, understand what his father actually showed him way back when, and understand not only the Force, but on top of that, actually kind of sun breathing. This might sound weird, but his father did lay the blueprints for this, and with his father's vestige, he can guide Tanjiro a lot more. Now, with that said, we have to put a cap on actually being able to utilize Tanjiro's father's vestige. So in my opinion, he just won't be able to leave the area that Tanjiro kind of was told to meet him at. And that would be kind of inconvenient because Tanjiro won't be able to work with his father, at least not as often, and not train with him as often. But Tanjiro knows principles of utilizing the Force, and he's able to stack that on top of his concentration breathing or his breathing style, and we made for a insanely powerful demon slayer, a demon slayer that will rival Hashira's quicker than you can possibly imagine, because at the end of the day, the Force is an insane ability that is way more powerful than concentration breathing, and if you stack that on top of it, well, it's insane what Tanjiro is capable of doing. Now, what would basically occur throughout this time with Urokodaki? It's just flat out very, very good training. Tanjiro would train as much as possible, would kind of, do his thing with Urokodaki, and the training is pretty hard, but I mean, it's nothing insane for Tanjiro to not handle, and it's nowhere near as hard as it normally is. And on top of that, Tanjiro's able to still utilize his sense of smell on top of the force and his ability to kind of sense everything around him, because the force is literally everywhere, and he'd be able to more or less be ready to go for the final selection quicker than normal. Honestly, might even be more prepared, or way more prepared, excuse me, for a final selection that would eventually come. Now, he could actually go to a final selection maybe even earlier on if he could catch one, but for easy sakes, we'll just say that he follows the same line. He follows the same final selection and so on. This final selection is so easy, and every single Demon Slayer would get through on this final selection. There's no way that Tanjiro doesn't kill every single demon, because he can sense every single demon. A scary feat, because demons love to hide within the darkness and love to actually hold that advantage, but he would not allow them to ever hold that advantage, because Tanjiro would know and understand where they are. Now, these abilities are not any high-tech abilities, in my opinion. He's not an insane force user. He just utilizes the minor kind of tactics of utilizing the force, and also just some abilities from the force that allow him to just make his Demon Slayer life a lot easier. Now, you could dig even deeper as a force user, or a quote-unquote Jedi, but he's not necessarily a Jedi. He's, he's in training still. There's no way he would be a full-fledged Jedi by far at this point, but he would be a utilizer of the force. Now, with that said, you could easily argue that Tanjiro could have even crazier abilities. We're talking about abilities that may even allow him to manipulate demons. Yes, and if you're able to manipulate demons and utilize them for information, there's a lot of things that Tanjiro could learn from certain demons, about locations of certain people, or even information about Muzan. You never know. Of course, Muzan could just, kill the demon, but still, being able to gather information like this and continue to gather it would be beneficial for not only him, but the Demon Slayer Corp. Now, with that said, how would everything happen once and after Rui? Because that's when it really matters. What would occur once he meets all the Hashira? Now, that's a pretty easy one. The Hashira would not really know much about the Force. Frankly, would know zero, if not literally anything. Maybe Ubuyashiki would know some things about the Force, saying that that was completely lost to time and that there's no way he's able to utilize it. But after he convinces them, and pretty easily convinces them, that he's able to utilize the Force, at least to an extent, well, they are pretty adamant about Tanjiro not only becoming a Hashira, but also, well, becoming kind of a teacher for the other Demon Slayers to learn how to utilize the Force. Now, I don't think Tanjiro would really be able to teach many people how to utilize the Force. I hate to say it, I would love to have a bunch of Hashira who are extremely good at utilizing the Force, but that just would not be realistic at all. I mean, of course, this isn't realistic either, because not only is it a what if, but I'm also talking about an ability that isn't even in Demon Slayer. But that's beyond the point at this moment. Now, with that said, Tanjiro could teach a couple of them. Maybe someone like Giyu, maybe some people like Shinobu, because that would drastically benefit her as well, being able to utilize the Force where her strength is lacking. But like I said, they would probably lack the wherewithal and also the ability to truly learn how to utilize the Force. And we're talking about a long time Tanjiro himself trained ever since his father passed away. I mean, this is a period of training that will not be quick enough. I mean, you could argue maybe their ability to utilize a breathing style could help them in the way of the Force, and yeah, you could, but I still don't think it's even close to enough time to utilize it in the way Tanjiro utilizes it. Maybe they can learn the basics, and that would definitely help them maybe with their style of breathing, But other than that, it won't benefit them anywhere near as much as it benefits Tanjiro. Now, with that said, there is a lot of things that Tanjiro would be able to do that will benefit and kill some of the strongest demons that are out there. Well, let's just start with the one and only Akaza, because Tanjiro would go on that mission with Rengoku, and yes, he is technically a Hashira, and that's because not only did he defeat Rui easily on his own, but also because he was deemed to be worthy of being a Hashira. I mean, at this point, they just chalk it up to him being not only a prodigy, but him being able to utilize something of the unknown, something that would give them the leg up on the Demon Slayers. Yes, they have immortality, but do they have more or less power that will surround them for eternity? They don't. Now, with that said, Akaza is actually a way easier fight than you possibly imagine. Frankly, even if Tanjiro physically can't keep up with some of these crazier demons, imagine how good of a support help Demon Slayer Tanjiro would be. The Force Hashira, that's what I would call him, the Force Hashira, could easily set up Demon Slayers to cut off the heads of demons very simply. Now, of course, you need to be strong enough, and certain demons have some crazy thick necks where it's hard to slice it off cleanly, but imagine Akaza thinking he's safe, thinking he's all good to go, taking on someone like Rengoku, but then out of nowhere, he can't move. None of his body parts are moving, and it's this sense of claustrophobia, as if everything's closing in on him, and he's stuck, and then a slice comes across his neck, and Rengoku screams as he slices the head off of Akaza. Yeah, something like that would be absolutely insane, but let's say he can't do that. Let's say somehow Rengoku can't chop off Akaza's head because it's just too strong of a neck. Oh well, how about holding down a demon with the Force until the sun comes out? Yes, I know, he probably wouldn't be able to exert it for hours on end, but what if they extend the battle as long as possible, and once that sun is close to be coming up, you freeze him. Stuck. Tanjiro holds him in place as long as possible as the sun creeps up and rises, and as the skin burns off of Akaza, he disintegrates into nothingness. Just like that. Yeah, Tanjiro having the Force is some insane utility. Even if you decided, hey, let's balance Tanjiro to an extent. Let's make him a worse Demon Slayer. He has a hard time at utilizing concentration breathing. He has a hard time actually learning ways of sun breathing, water breathing, anything. And all he has is the Force, the utility, the support. He's able to more or less be the perfect support Demon Slayer. Something that very few have. You can argue Shinobu is kind of like that, the poison and stuff like that, but we know the poison is practically obsolete against some of the higher tier demons, but the Force would be crucial against some of the higher tier demons. The ones of the 12 Kizuki or the upper moons, they would die because of the Force. It would be absolutely insane, and the utility of the Force would allow for Demon Slayers that normally die, like Rengoku, like Tengen, to actually live and continue on. Now, I don't think Tengen would continue on because he made that promise with his wives, but it could still be an argument there that he is pretty damn healthy, didn't lose anything, no eye loss, no nothing, and, well, he'd be forced into battle. But with Tanjiro there, it makes it that much greater. So, let's talk about two ways this could go. Now, each way, in my opinion, ends with the victory for the Demon Slayers. But at the same time, you gotta understand, they already win in the normal canon. So adding something like this would allow them to win a lot easier, but I want to talk about why. Now, one way is Tanjiro being a really good Demon Slayer. Just being able to utilize concentration breathing really well, so everything he normally was able to do, but stack the Force on top of it. That makes him crazy levels. Unstoppable, faster, stronger, better than Muzan. It wouldn't really be fair. That's just straight up how I see it. Now, With that said, what about the other way? You make Tanjiro a mediocre demon slayer, someone that's not that good at fighting, someone that can't really use a sword as well as some of these others, but his utilization of the force makes up for it, because it can set up demon slayers, Hashira, for kills that normally wouldn't happen. Kokushibo, someone that is absolutely teared through the demon slayers, killed multiple people. Imagine if Tanjiro actually was able to utilize the force to slow him down, making a demon weaker, healing those around him, utilizing a force heal, but also giving openings to those around him as well. Jeez, that would make for an insane support demon slayer and an insane final fight against someone like Muzan. Now, with all that said, the main way I could see this going, and without purposely nerfing Tanjiro, would be Tanjiro still is the same demon slayer he is, just with the utilization of the force. Who needs a lightsaber when you have sun breathing? I mean, I take that back. I would rather have a lightsaber, but that's beyond the point. Tanjiro would be able to utilize not only the force, but sun breathing to easily fend off Muzan, and as the sun would approach the sky, Muzan would not be able to go anywhere. He would have no chance, he would not be able to survive, and he wouldn't be able to move, because in a panic state, with his strength, his skill, with his powers dwindling faster and faster, the force would hold him exactly where Tanjiro wants him, and eventually Muzan would disintegrate, just like all the other demons before him. Now, with that said, I would love to hear what you think about Tanjiro utilizing the force. If he could use the force, how do you think this would go? I mean, maybe you have a couple other ideas that I left out. I would love to hear them in the comment section below. And I know some of you were talking about how you would like to hear less OP stories. I definitely will be doing that as well. I kind of been in the OP story-esque type of game for a while, so I like talking about these more OP scenarios, having cooler abilities, stuff like that. But I will also add in a couple other Demon Slayer ideas where they're not as OP and maybe just adds a little bit more utility to Tanjiro or some other Demon Slayer. With that said, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Leave a comment, leave a sub, leave a like, all that good stuff, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.